A Tailor's Wife, by A.B. Marcus. The ivy didn't just grow on the walls of Stillmore Mansion, it strangled them. It was a rambling shambles of an old British-style mansion, incongruously perched on a craggy island off the coast of Maine. A British relic dragged stone by stone across the Atlantic a century ago. The fog here turned everything into a kind of grayscale world, draining the color from the moss and the sea. I stood by the window, watching groundskeeper Giuseppe hack at the overgrown hedges with a grimace. He knew the secrets buried in that soil. Everyone did. "Come away from the glass, Marilyn," Lee said. His voice was low, laced with that distinct cruelty I had grown accustomed to. He sat by the fire, nursing a scotch, his knuckles white against the glass. "I'm just watching the storm roll in," I whispered, clutching my cardigan. "You're looking for him," Lee snapped. "He's not coming." But he was wrong. The ferry, piloted by Kip, was already battling the swells. Edward was back. Why had Lee's brother stayed away for 10 years? Why show up now, with 2 worn leather suitcases and his haunted eyes? The whispers in town said Edward ran because of what happened to Ashley. Poor, sweet Ashley. They say she fell from the widow's walk the night of the solstice. They never found the body, only a silk scarf snagged on the jagged rocks below. Vicky, the housekeeper, entered with tea, her hands trembling as she set the tray down. She looked at Lee with pure terror. "Why did she stay? Why did I stay? He's horrible to you." Ben had told me earlier that day. Ben was our neighbor, the only one brave enough to visit. "Leave him, Marilyn. Come stay at the cottage." "I can't," I had said, feigning weakness. "He needs me." The heavy oak doors groaned open. Edward stood there, dripping wet, looking at Lee with a mixture of hatred and pity. Joseph, the family attorney, stood behind him, clutching a briefcase that surely contained the papers to dissolve the trust. "You shouldn't have come back, Edward," Lee said, not rising from his chair. "I know what you're doing to her, Lee," Edward shouted, pointing a shaking finger at my husband. "I know you keep her medicated. I know you keep her trapped in this rotting tomb." I began to cry, shrinking back against the velvet drapes. "Please, Edward, don't upset him." "See," Edward roared. "Look at her. She's terrified of you." The lights flickered, the generator failing in the storm, or perhaps it was Ashley. I felt her cold breath on my neck. The ghost of this house wasn't in the walls, it was in the silence between us. Dinner was a disaster. Lee carved the roast with ruthless rigor. Marilyn, Edward, Joseph, Ben, and Vicky sat in silence. Even Giuseppe had been invited in from the storm, sitting awkwardly at the end of the table. 10 years is a long time to hide, brother, Lee said, his knife scraping the china. "I wasn't hiding," Edward said. "I was looking for proof." "Proof of what?" I asked softly. "That Lee killed Ashley," Edward said. The table gasped. Lee slammed his hand down. "Stop it, Edward." "No." Edward stood up. "I'm taking Marilyn out of here. Tonight." Lee lunged across the table, grabbing Edward by the lapels. It looked exactly as I knew it would, the violent, controlling husband finally snapping. A perfect tableau. I picked up the carving knife. The movement was fluid, practiced. I didn't plunge it into Lee, the monster. I slid it across the table to him. "Do it, Lee," I whispered. "Protect us." But Lee didn't take the knife. He looked at me, and for the first time, the guests saw his face not as angry but as terrified. "Marilyn, put it down," Lee said, his voice trembling. "Did you take your pills?" "I don't need pills, Lee. I have clarity now. Just like I had with Ashley." The room went dead silent. The wind howled outside, sounding suspiciously like a scream falling from a high ledge. "Ashley didn't fall," I said, a smile blooming on my face as I looked at Edward. "She was trying to take you away from me, Edward, just like you're trying to take me away from my house." Edward stepped back, horror dawning in his eyes. "Marilyn, Lee told me Ashley fell. He said it was an accident." I lied. Lee wept, sinking to his knees. "I lied to protect you, Edward. I lied to keep the police away from her. I've spent 10 years keeping her here, guarding the world from her. I thought I could fix her." I laughed, a bright, glittering sound that bounced off the high, moss-stained ceilings. "Oh, Lee," I said, stepping over the broken glass, the knife glinting in the firelight. "You never understood. You aren't the jailer. You're the alibi." As the thunder cracked, drowning out their screams, I realized this was going to be a lovely story. A tragic husband, a return brother, and a wife driven mad by the isolation of an island off the coast of Maine. That sounds like a great book. I'm going to need someone to read that to the police. The end.